Hello, 5B. All right, we are continuing with The Other Side of Truth. This is chapter 34, called Out of the Shadows. A small congregation of faces and placards greeted them as the children and Uncle Roy walked towards the high wire fence at Heathlands Detention Centre. Sade scanned the messages. Salaja must stay. Remember Ken Saro-Wiwa. Nigeria needs a free press. No more deportations. Give refugees a fair deal. The people looked friendly, talking, laughing, calling out. All because of Papa. This would cheer him. The children had spoken to him after seeing the television news and the newspapers. Sade had asked if it was true about the hunger strike. Papa said they must not worry. The most important thing was for his case to be public. But every time Sade ate, she thought of Papa. What was it like not to eat at all? Behind the wire, a guard crossed the courtyard, his head erect, ignoring the crowd. But from high above, the cameras pointed down in their direction, and when Sade glanced ahead to her right, she received a shock. 3 full police vans, full of black uniforms behind the windows, were waiting in the car park near the gate. Were they really expecting trouble? Uncle, why? Before she finished, shouting broke out. Salaja must stay. No deportation. A policeman and a woman marched calmly out of the gate towards the vans. Salaja must stay. No deportation. Uncle Roy tightened his grip on Sade's hand. Femi edged a little closer to his sister as they approached the gate and the demonstrators. A man in the crowd stepped out and addressed Uncle Roy. Sir, are these by any chance Salaja's children? The boy looks just like him. He spoke with a strong Nigerian accent. Femi frowned but looked pleased at the same time. They are, replied Uncle Roy. Listen, good people, called the man waving a cloth cap. This fine young boy and girl are Falarin Salaja's children. The ones the immigration say don't exist, but here they are, coming to see their own daddy. All around him, the people started to clap. Please tell him, we support him all the way, the man continued enthusiastically. Tell him we like what he writes. Nigeria needs more brave people like him. The children and Uncle Roy smiled. Tell him we won't give up. We shall demonstrate for him until they let him go. You better let them go now, Deji, interrupted another man. He laughed. They didn't come to hear one of your big speeches. Oh, sorry. Mr. Big Speech apologised. But we want your daddy to know he has many friends. Mr. Big Speech reminded Sade of Mr. Abiona, who kept the stall down the road. He was such a fan of Papa's that he'd often praised him when the children came to buy anything. Thank you, sir, she said. We'll tell Papa. The gate that had curiously swung open for them on their previous visit with Mama up here remained closed this time until they were actually standing in front of it. They searched for a bell to ring to entry. Sade could see the eyes behind the plate glass in the security office inspecting them. Then the buzzer sounded and the gate unlocked. Inside the office, the guards were grimly silent. The calls and shouts of the demonstrators were muffled from here. When Uncle Roy announced they'd come to see Mr. Salaja, even the air seemed to stiffen. They followed a guard across the open yard to the next locked gate. The demonstrators on the other side of the fence waved and yelled messages of support. Giving a little wave back, Sade felt embarrassed. She was cheating. They would not wave if she knew how she'd behaved to Mariam and her family. If only she could talk to Papa now about what she should do, but Papa had far too many bigger problems to worry about. He's in there already. The guard had a face like a china doll's. Sorry, I've lost my place. Come on. Sorry, the book is frozen here. Wait a second. Come on, you can do it. Hold on. Yes, okay, here we're back. The woman guard had a face like a china doll's. Her green eyes signed towards the visitors' room. Who else was there to see Papa? Sade and Femi darted ahead of Uncle Roy. Papa was sitting in the far corner facing the door. The visitor's back was turned to them, but when he twisted around, Sade gasped. "Uncle Dele!" He looked a lot older than Sade remembered. A tumult of words and hugs followed. Papa pulled Uncle Roy into the circle, shaking his hand and thanking him many times over. "Well, well, my little Olufemi, follow Sade, both so grown up." Uncle Dele's eyes looked a little moist as they settled into a huddle of chairs. "Your beard's like Papa's. You copied Uncle Tunde as well," Femi sniggered. "We couldn't find you. Where have you been, Uncle Dele?" Sade was almost accusing. "It's a long story, and this beard even comes into it." Uncle Dele laughed lightly, scratching the trim black border. "After what these children have been through, it won't come as a surprise," Papa sighed. In his spare time, Uncle Dele had been working with Nigerians for Democracy in London. They'd be arguing that Nigeria should not be allowed to attend the Commonwealth Conference. In fact, they wanted Nigeria to be expelled from the Commonwealth until there were proper elections that allowed people to vote freely for a new government. Then the threats had started, over the telephone, both at home and the art college. At first their uncle had ignored them, but they grew menacing. The day after Ken Saro-Wiwa was hanged, a note was slipped through the letterbox in his flat. It said, "You next." He'd gone into hiding immediately. "That was just 2 days before Mama was shot," Papa added quietly. Some English friends had given Uncle Dele a safe place to stay in the countryside for a few weeks. He'd not been able to read any Nigerian newspapers and had been cut off from all his usual contacts for the last few weeks. At least one of them must be a spy. The 7 o'clock news on Friday had been a terrible shock for him. He had to come out of hiding to help Papa. In fact, the press were coming this evening to interview him outside the detention centre. "But this hunger strike of yours, Folarin," Uncle Dele lowered his voice. "I don't think that's a good idea. Think of your health, please." "My brother, what else can I do?" Papa threw up his hands. His face looked thinner than before. "A hunger strike makes news. It stays news. Okay, not for too long, but people will want to know what's happening. These immigration people can't steal me away on a plane when others are watching them." Sade watched Papa's fingers at their gymnastics. Uncle Tunde had often tried to get their father to change his mind, but once Papa had worked out his reasons, it was like trying to uproot a baobab tree. She'd always loved to hear Papa argue. He said things in ways that always made matters sharper. How she wished she could talk to him about Mariam alone. They'd already hugged Papa goodbye, when he hastily pulled an envelope from his pocket. "Oh, nearly forgot. For Master and Miss Solaja, personal delivery." Papa made a small mock bow, and she took the letter. "Keep writing, my child," Papa added softly. "As long as we have our pens, we can talk." Papa's words swirled in Sade's mind as the wooden door crashed heavily behind them. The children, Uncle Roy and Uncle Dele, trailed behind the prison guard in silence across pools of yellow that lit up the 2 prison yards. Outside the final gate, they were greeted by cheers and a flash of camera lights.